Let me ask you a question. Do you like Dehya? Do you want to build a team for her? Since I started playing her, I've really fallen in love with her kit, and I really enjoy her playstyle. To address the elephant in the room though, Dehya has received a lot of hate for her underwhelming damage as well as some other weaknesses in her kit, which I do want to address. Compared to some characters, she is definitely a bit weaker damage-wise. However, that comes with a trade. Her survivability and team-wide resistance to interruption is actually pretty valuable. You may even have seen some people just putting the clam set on her and soloing bosses by going AFK. Regardless of all that though, I have found a great deal of success with her, having her do a respectable amount of damage and finding a home for her in a number of different styles of teams. I'd categorize her teams as on-field, where she's the primary damage, off-field, where she is supporting other characters, or memes, which is just there for a laugh. Since Dehya is fairly new, I wanted to do something a bit different and go over her strengths and weaknesses in some greater detail and talk about the kinds of supports we can use to help push her strengths while shoring up some of her weaknesses. So firstly, her strengths. Her skill gives her a great source of off-field pyro application at fixed intervals. The damage from this isn't huge, but it is consistent, and can have good uptime with good use of her burst. That said, her burst actually does do a lot of damage, though this comes at the cost of locking her into the animation to do so. With a good build and team backing it up, its total damage can be well into the hundreds of thousands of damage. It's quite hot. Next, she's really tanky. Getting damage reduction and having health scaling makes her very hard to kill. Not to mention, she offers some damage reduction as well as resistance to interruption to her teammates as well. Finally, her hybrid scaling. Given she scales with both health and attack, you can finally have a use for all those almost good artifacts. You know the ones you rolled nothing but health on. Sadly, now I have to talk about her weaknesses, and they are very noteworthy. She comes with some long cooldowns and a high burst cost. Some of this can be mitigated, but you need to be aware of it and plan around it. Worth noting though is that her skill cooldown is mostly fixed with her Constellation 2, but without it, you can use her burst to help fill in the would-be downtime of her skill. Next, you can't talk about Dehya without mentioning her lower than average damage. Her Constellation 1 absolutely helps with this, but without it, her damage can feel a bit on the low side. This can be helped also with a good team to prop her up and smart use of artifacts to get value out of her, but be aware that her damage, mostly her skill, may be a bit lower than you'd expect. That being said, her investment costs are quite high. Unlike some other characters, you really do need to put a lot into her to make her shine. And finally, her hybrid scaling. Yes, it is both an upside and a downside. It makes building her potentially very awkward. Again, this is pretty much solved once you have her C1, as you can pretty much all in on health at that point, but prior to that, you have to put a lot of thought into her build. Now, with all this in mind, we can start picking out characters that can support her and her playstyle pretty well, and use that as our starting point for building teams around her. Keep in mind that these are just characters that support her damage mostly, but can be very useful in building teams where she is just a cog in the machine rather than the main DPS. So anyway, here's the list. Bennett. This guy is going to be her best friend, and actually makes a pretty good argument for activating his C6. That little extra bit of pyro damage can go a long way, though if you don't have his C6, or don't want to activate it because of other characters, he's still great without it. Raiden Shogun, the queen of the batteries. She pretty much single-handedly solves Dehya's energy issues all on her own, and can offer a lot of damage during Dehya's downtime. Kazuha and Sucrose. These two pretty much fill the same role, giving elemental mastery buffs, lowering enemy resistances, as well as offering some powerful crowd control, a general staple for almost any team. Kaya and Zhongling. Also together are these two. They can both be very good batteries for Dehya, while also offering a lot of damage, and in Kaya's case, letting Dehya get some powerful melts in with her burst. Finally, Kokomi and Diona. These two are debatably her best healers. Kokomi is generally better for enabling Dehya, but Diona can be a strong battery for her while enabling powerful melts as well. Keep in mind that you do not want to use Diona with Dehya if you have Dehya's limited banner weapon, as it loses part of its perks if you have a shield. Without it though, Diona's a great fit. Now that was a lot of info all at once, but we're not done yet. Next we need to put together some teams for her to shine in, and I have quite a few in mind. All these teams I have tested a fair bit, or used in the Spiral Abyss to some success, even the meme teams. You can try these teams yourself, or use my teams as a base to start doing your own Dehya experiments, and find a team that works for you. Without further ado, let's get into it. I have come up with a number of teams that I think Dehya can really shine in, 5 in total. There are 2 off-field support teams, 2 meme teams, and of course, 1 on-field Dehya team. Team number 1, Burgeon. The goal of this team is to create a whole bunch of Dendro cores and have Dehya blow them up. Not much to it. This team would call for Dehya to have a lot of elemental mastery and most likely use the Paradise Lost artifact set. Honestly, this isn't the best use for Dehya in my opinion, but it's hard to argue with the damage that Burgeon can do. As for alternative characters go, for your Hydro spot, you can use either Kokomi or Barbara. This also means that you don't need to run Yo-Yo in the healer spot. And as for your Dendro characters, the free options of the Traveler and Kale can fill the spots exceptionally well. Team number 2, Hyper Carry. With this team, your goal is just to have a single unit do the bulk of your damage. In this example, I'm using Wanderer, but other characters like Ayato, Ayaka, Child, or even Dilu can work here as well. With this team, as well as the next 2 teams I talk about, you'll most likely use the Tenacity of the Millelith's artifact set on her. When it comes to the alternative characters, it is extremely flexible. Most healers can replace Bennett, and the other spot can be Sucrose, Kujo Sara, Shincho, or in the Wanderer's case specifically, Farzan. Team number 3, Sayu's Delivery Service. This is the first of the 2 meme teams that I had in mind. One of Sayu's biggest issues is that she is knocked out of her skill pretty easily. Dehya can help with that. The goal of this team is to get as much damage sources circling around Sayu as possible, and just roll into enemies. Now, when it comes to meme teams, there generally aren't a lot of flexibility in the team because then the meme isn't really there anymore, right? That being said, this team is fairly free-to-play friendly, as it uses 2 free characters, and the only thing that can be costly, if you haven't rolled on a banner with Sayu, is of course Dehya herself. The team is really funny in my opinion, and I take a great joy in rolling around at the speed of sound. Give this one a shot sometime if you can. Also, you can't forget that the most recent Windbloom event also gave us a new Claymore that is really good on Sayu. Team number 4, Punch. This is a team I've just affectionately been calling Team Punch. The goal is to punch everything. Dehya punches the enemies, Bennett punches the floor, and Hazo air punches everything else. All we need now is a 4th unit that can also punch and we'll be set, but for now the last character can be anyone that might have a boost for Hazo's damage. Or a character that looks like they might punch someone, like Rosaria. Punch! Finally, team number 5, Dehya Rational. This team is just a mashup of the Raiden National team and Dehya. So this is the team that I came up with that lets Dehya more or less be a main DPS. This setup of Raiden, Bennett, and Kazuha are all there either to buff Dehya's damage or to get her burst off cooldown. In my case, Bennett's also C6, which gives her even more opportunity for on-field damage with the Pyro infusion that he gives. For the most part, this is a mono Pyro team that also can overload sometimes, which unlike a lot of characters, Dehya doesn't actually mind overload since her burst moves her forward naturally, allowing her to give chase without having to really think about it. On this team, Dehya's artifacts are a 2-piece Tenacity of the Millelith for the bonus health, and a 2-piece Crimson Witch of Flame for the pyro damage bonus. Okay, so wow, that was a ton of info all at once, and I think we're actually done this time. I didn't want to go into much detail on building Dehya with the weapons and artifacts, as it's not really my focus here. We're here for the teams. But I will note that for weapons, Her weapon is obviously her best in slot. Other than that, any other crit claymore like the Redstone or Serpent Spine are all very good. And the attack claymores like Wolf's Gravestone and that Big Fish Claymore are also serviceable. A shout out to the Bell, as we finally have a character that can actually use the damn thing and not feel terrible about doing so. To wrap things up, here's how my full run of the Abyss with Dehya on every floor went. I had a lot of success, and I even got 36 stars eventually, though I did quite a few attempts to get that last star I needed. I sadly didn't record the last attempt, but it is easily recreatable if anyone wants to see the proof that it can be done with her being an important part of it. Dehya really came together very well, and I had a lot of fun trying to get the most out of her. In conclusion, she's 100% better than what people have been saying since her release. though I have to admit she needs quite a bit more investment to get her off the ground than other characters. So I hope anyone watching this finds this helpful, and I wish you all luck in your Dehya team building. And that's all for me. Cheers.